It is my privilege to introduce the moderator for the evening. Felicia Mitchell Hampton is a volunteer board member of the Missouri Voter Protection Coalition. I am so pleased that she has agreed to do this. Mr. Mitchell, Miss Mitchell Hampton is a busy lady. She is a healthcare teacher to high school students in the day, a nurse to patients in the evenings or weekends, and an executive program producer to a long-running issue-oriented Freeman Bosley radio show. And as an active member of the sorority Sigma Gamma Rho, I've seen her providing election education services on election days at various polling locations. Ladies and gentlemen, our facilitator for the evening, Ms. Felicia Mitchell Hampton.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Butler. It is truly an honor to serve as the moderator for this important and much needed discussion on redistricting and gerrymandering in Missouri and across our country. When I began reflecting on tonight's topic, I found myself asking, what can I do to make a difference? Because redistricting isn't just lines on maps, it's about lives. It determines who has a voice in shaping policies that impact our daily reality. From access to quality healthcare, to funding our public schools, to housing and social services that strengthen our communities. Here in Missouri, these new maps have stirred real concern, not only for what they mean politically, but what they mean practically. When neighborhoods are divided, so are the resources, the representations, and sometimes even the hope people have that their vote will truly matter. Tonight's conversation is about more than maps. It's about fairness, accountability, and the future of our democracy. Our goal is to connect policy to people, to better understand how gerrymandering impacts health, education, and opportunity, and to consider what collective action looks like moving forward. I want to thank each and every one of you for showing up tonight, those on Zoom, those here in person, for staying informed and for being a part of this civic dialogue. Your presence here affirms that democracy is stronger when people are engaged, informed, and unafraid to ask the questions. With that being said, let us begin this powerful discussion. Thank you. We're going to start with Senator Brian Williams. And we thank you for taking the time out tonight. Happy birthday to your wife. We thank you for taking and carving time out for this much needed discussion. The first question that I have for you is, can you briefly summarize what took place during September's extraordinary session on congressional redistricting and the major factors that drove the debate? And you can come off mute.
Thank you about that. For some reason, it wouldn't let me unmute.
It's okay.
Yeah, so it's really good. It's really good to be with you all today. And I was hoping I could be there in person. Um, it's really good to be with you guys in person. And, I think when we reflect on what's happening in the legislature, we have to think about the fact that this is a complete dismissal to the will of the voters. And remind people it's not just the congressional redistricting, but it's also the gutting of the citizen-led petition process, which means that there's been a process that has allowed us to expand Medicaid, get access to earned sick pay, minimum wage increase, access to reproductive and women's health rights. Those things are now in jeopardy because the legislature, particularly Republicans, have decided that they wanted to overdo the will of the people and pretty much lead with the essence that they didn't know what they were doing when they went to the ballot box. Therefore, they need to make it harder for them to be able to do it in the future. In terms of the congressional redistricting, as you all know, we are now looking to see, and Denise can speak more to the legal side of this in the courts, but there was an elimination of a congressional district in Kansas City, which has now eliminated one of two Democratic congressional seats in the state of Missouri, and has now drawn that district roughly to the middle of the state. So we've seen gerrymandering at its finest. And what I tell people is that the deeply concerning part of this is that this is purely a Trump agenda, meaning the president has called members of the legislature and has made it clear that they need to push his agenda. And that's only a way for him to cheat this midterm election cycle and hope that he'll be able to maintain the majority in the Congress, in my opinion, to try to seek a third term to continue to put our country through what we have all deemed as total chaos and a, a pure infringe on the democratic process.
All right, thank you. Can you share with us, and thank you for that information, can you share with us what were some of the key concerns raised in the House and how did they differ from what was discussed in the Senate? You're still on mute, I think. Yes. Okay. Senator, if you're talking, you're on mute.
And so what it's doing is it's keeping me on mute, so it won't come for me to unmute for some reason.
Okay.
So I think the host has to do it whenever I speak. So what happened is the first time I've ever seen this since I've been in the legislature. Essentially, the Senate took up the bill, and my Republican colleagues pretty much decided to dismiss the rules and eliminate debate on both bills by calling the previous question, and never allowed the bills to come up for debate, never allowed there to be any discussion on the constitutionality of the bill, didn't even allow the body to convene and have a constructive conversation around it. For those who are not familiar with the two chambers, the Senate has historically been known as the institution that maintains what we call the deliberative body, meaning we slow down legislation, we have debates, we engage on the language. We even make modifications and for amendments to make the bill something that the entire body feels comfortable with. That process did not happen. Uh, it's a very rare procedural move called the PQ, or also known as the previous question. Uh, the first time I've seen such a draconian act in the Senate is deeply concerning. Um, it reflected a lot of the cadence of the House, which is known to be an up-down vote, and they see PQs every day. Deeply concerning, and my only guess can be is that the governor, as well as members of the Senate caucus on the Republican side, was bullied by Trump. He called every member of the state Senate on the Republican side, told him that he needed them to vote in support of eliminating a congressional district in Kansas City. And then he also told them that he was immensely popular in Missouri, in a subtle way of threatening them if they were to vote against him. He would use that as leverage to criticize them and challenge them in their next election.
Okay. Were you able to hear what was said? Excellent. Thank you for that information. And so, Senator, I'm going to switch over to the Honorable Denise, who is the CEO of Missouri Voter Protection Coalition. And if you could just take the time and help the audience understand why redistricting matters and why this panel is timely.
Oh, goodness. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you to Proud. And I just want to show some appreciation here, and for, of course, Senator Williams, Representative Proudie, and to our fabulous moderator, and also to Cassandra and Mildred, who's here. We have spent a lot of hours in this library back in the days, months, and even years following the murder of Mike Brown here in Ferguson, and many nights in front of the police department down the street. So this is definitely a space that has a history of being used to fight for liberation. So I'm grateful to be here. So yes, this is very timely right now. In fact, it couldn't be more timely. The process of redistricting may seem sort of boring or kind of academic. You do lots of statistics and draw lots of charts and things like that. But at its core, it really determines our ability to have a say and a voice, and to freely and fairly be able to elect candidates of our choice.
Mhm.
That's what this is about. And typically we only do it every 10 years. Many of you are probably familiar with this concept. We do it every 10 years after the census. Why? Because the purpose of redistricting is to adjust lines every now and then when we have new information about how many people live in each part of town, so that we can make each district roughly the same size. That's the point of it, right? And so we only know if populations shift after the census, because that's when we get counted. That's why it happens every 10 years. Then lawmakers, and here in Missouri, state representative and state legislative district lines are actually created through a public nonpartisan commission that members of the public have the ability to come and sit in on meetings and weigh in on the maps. Some of you may have done that after the last census. But when it comes to our members of Congress in Missouri, it's the legislature that draws those district lines. And while certainly, we know there's a Republican supermajority in the Missouri legislature that may have political whims about how to do that, but there are guardrails in our Constitution that guide the legislature in how to create these lines. In other words, you're supposed to keep intact communities together.
Mhm.
Because, and it makes sense, right? Because they have some shared interests, right? You are supposed to ensure that communities that have a sort of pivotal mass of minority residents, that those lines are drawn in such a way that those communities are able to elect candidates of their choice. And in fact, Missouri law, our Constitution, and even federal law have protections against drawing lines in such a way that it would split up minority communities, say communities of color, or take part of one town and put it in the same district as a town way over here that has nothing in common. That's what's called a gerrymander. So there were a lot of things that went wrong with this, right? After the 2020 census, Missouri lawmakers did what our Constitution tells them they have to do. Our Constitution actually spells this out and says, after the census numbers are delivered, the legislature shall draw the maps. Senator Williams was in office then, Representative Proudie was in office then, and they passed a map. Those numbers came out in 2021. They passed a map in 2022. Both of these representatives were part of that process. And even then, it was a pretty gerrymandered map in the sense that Democrats make up about 40% of Missouri's population. Republicans make up about 60%. But only 2 out of the 8 congressional districts were actually crafted in such a way that it would allow a Democrat to win. So already you're looking at significantly disproportionately less representation. Then came this summer and the call from President Trump to have this extraordinary session. The governor has a right to call these sessions, but only while legislators are not in, their terms adjourn in May of every year, and they don't come back till January. These folks are literally doing this as an additional part-time job during that half of the year. And so there's a provision that says, well, if there's something really extraordinary that happens, we got to have a way to bring them back. So think about the tornadoes that ripped through this community on May 16th. That couldn't wait till next January. So the governor brought them back so they could talk about tornado relief. In this case, though, there was nothing like that driving it, just the ask from the president. And that's what brought them back. And that's what led to the maps being passed. And like Senator Williams said, they did so in a pretty brazenly insulting way, not allowing legislators like Senator Williams and Representative Proudie to be able to even speak up on the floor and speak on behalf of their constituents, who overwhelmingly said, no, they didn't want this. Mm-hmm. The timeliness of it is this. There's a provision in Missouri law, actually our Constitution says that if the people don't like something that the legislature passes, a piece of legislation, if they can get enough people to sign a petition in a pretty short amount of time, 90 days, you can put it on the ballot and ask the people to vote. That's what's happening right now. And that time is almost up. In order to get this on the ballot, so that means that Missourians will get to vote on whether we should have these maps. All right? Missourians will get to vote on whether we should have these maps. And the 90-day clock started ticking back on September 12th when the legislature passed these measures. And a campaign called People, Not Politicians, Missouri was formed on that very day and began collecting signatures. They have to collect 117,000 valid signatures of registered voters in Missouri from all across the state. They have already collected over 150,000 signatures. This is how unpopular these maps are. But all of those, they have to get quality controls. They have to be registered voters. That has to be legible, et cetera. And so the push is on to continue to gather signatures until December. All the final signatures have to be submitted on December 11th. And so the campaign has the goal of stopping signature collection after Thanksgiving. So the time is literally right now. How many of you have collected signatures? Collected. How many of you would want to collect signatures? We're going to give you some info today about how you can do that. How many of you have signed the petition? Excellent. Excellent.
Can you take 1 minute before we bring State Representative Proudie in? Take 1 minute, and to my understanding, there was an issue with the signatures that were possibly they may throw some out because they thought they were collected too soon. Can you expound on that a little bit for us, please?
I sure can. And this is a big myth. Unfortunately, in addition to attacks on our democracy and our ability to elect candidates of our choice, we're also seeing attacks on the truth when it comes to voting and voting rights. And our own Secretary of State, who is the state's chief elections official, the top elections official in the whole state, said incorrectly and followed it up with a lawsuit saying that any signature that was collected prior to the day that the Secretary of State certified the measure would be invalid. This is not true. Missouri law is very clear that the process starts. The trigger for the process is passage by the legislature of these maps. And so this is how scared they are of the people actually speaking their minds. I mean, this thing isn't even on the ballot yet, right? This is just saying, let's let's take it to a vote of the people. They are so scared of that they are literally giving out disinformation and threatening people. The Secretary of State said that somebody that signed prior to the time where it was legally eligible to do so would be guilty of an election infraction, a misdemeanor. That is also not true. And yet the folks that are working on a very tight timeline to get these signatures now have to go to court. In fact, were in court yesterday on this actual question because the state of Missouri sued them, saying that they didn't do. And I want to assure you that if you sign this petition, you do not need to sign it again. This is designed simply to sow confusion. And in fact, if you do sign it again, knowing that you previously had a valid signature, you could be engaging in an election offense. So we don't want to see that happen. We want to help make sure that this process gets before voters. The good news is, and I'll stop here, once sufficient numbers of signatures are collected, the question about our congressional maps goes on the ballot. Everything is put on hold. The new congressional district lines do not go into effect, meaning that Congressman Cleaver's existing district remains intact until this matter is voted on by the people. And it's slated to be voted on in the November 2026 elections, but the legislature could also choose to put this on a different election, say the August elections next year, or call a special election.
Thank you. Thank you. And so as we shift and speaking to State Representative Proudie, who was one of the elected officials that was in that room on the House floor fighting against this bill, I want to ask you to share with us that experience and as you went through that process trying to make sure that House Bill 1 did not pass, as well as the question is, how do the new district boundaries affect representation for communities like Ferguson in North County? And before you get into this, you can say hello to the people, and because I know we didn't give you a chance, so I want to make sure you.
Well, hello, everyone. It is an honor and privilege to serve as your state rep. I believe I know pretty much everyone in this room. It has been an absolute privilege. And I'll be brief because I do want to leave some time for questions, but I do, and not to circumvent your question, I want to go back because this bill is a House bill, was a House bill. So it started in the House. So the House had a little bit more time, not a lot of time, because this process was only a week and a half from start to finish, which is really unusual. I do want to let you all know how we got here. So as Denise stated, in the summertime, we came back for a special election, not because of the tornado. That wasn't the extraordinary session reason. The reason we were going to come back anyway was to give the Chiefs and Royals a massive tax credit to stay here. I was a no on that as well. You know, the tornado was lanyard. It was extra. This is the second extraordinary session. Now, we do go back in September to do veto session. Those things ran somewhat together in that we had the extraordinary session first, then veto session, and then we turned it over to the Senate. We kind of heard rumors about this coming after Texas kind of pronounced that they were going to do it. At first, Missouri's legislators, even the Republicans, particularly the Republicans, like, no, this is not how Missouri do things. We did this already. It doesn't make a lot of sense. And just as Senator Williams said, someone from Trump's administration called our Republicans and Republican leadership to sort of push them into this. And the governor. So the governor took a while to call the special session. Before he called it, Donald Trump got on Truth Social and said that he was doing it. Now, one thing about that, whether the governor, in my opinion, or not wanted to do this, it's already on Truth Social. And one thing about people Trump don't like on Truth Social, they'll get calls, they'll get harassed, they'll get threatened. No one wants to deal with that. So we ended up in special session. He held up this map, this paper map in a video that he did and released it to social media. No one saw a municipality, a city, or anything on the map. It's just like a map. It was called the Missouri First Map. We don't know who drew it. We don't know where it came from. And that's going to be important in a second. Is the Missouri First Map. The budget chair was the bill's sponsor, and he is from somewhere close to Arkansas. So this impacted a district that he doesn't even represent, okay? So we didn't get rid of the congressional districts. We have eight, that's set in stone. What it did was it drew the district in such a way that it would make it very, very hard for a Democrat to win, and the space is massive. Jackson County, and they can do this because Jackson County is split up in 4 different cities. So that was part of their rationale. Going through the questions, they couldn't really answer questions about it because they saw the map when we saw the map. There wasn't they went behind closed doors to see this map. They saw it when we saw it. The governor probably only saw it a couple days before that. One of the rationales or defenses that they have for the map was, yes, the Constitution says when we get census numbers, we must redistrict. The Constitution doesn't explicitly say that's the only time we can redistrict. Just when you get this, you have to do it then, but that's not necessarily the only time. That's their rationale for the ability to do that. That's kind of a thing in the legislature where if a law in statute, the Constitution is a little bit different of a document, but in statute, if something doesn't necessarily say explicitly that this is the only time that something can be done, usually it'll go to the Supreme Court and they'll say that the legislative intent was this. Because the legislature had an opportunity to change it and they chose not to, then it is what it is. So that's their base argument for being able to do this. We're like, when means when. When you get the census is when you do this, right? And so that's a big part of how we got here. Now, as to the map being rushed, another one of the things that we found, because the bill was large, and of course, some of us found it early, but in legislation, it's not my job to fix your terrible bill, right? If your bill is terrible, we want it to stay terrible to the extent possible so that the courts will toss it. In this bill, there is a small portion in Kansas City, KC 811, that is in both congressional districts 4 and 5, which is unconstitutional, one person, one vote. But there are about 830 people under the map that the Republicans put together that would have about 830 people an opportunity to vote in 2 congressional districts, which is what happens when you rush it. Now, conspiracy theorists may say that Governor Kehoe's office intentionally did it because he didn't want to do this redistricting in the first place. In the House, this map, though, they have a pretty good majority. It's 108 now of them, and 52 Democrats. The bill barely passed. It passed by 7 votes. The Speaker of the House was a no. So we had some Republicans to vote no. It wasn't unanimous in the House. It was extremely unpopular. People had no idea because again, they saw the map. When we saw, they didn't know what was happening. They didn't know what was going on. They just know we were called back and Donald Trump, and we don't want to be the one on Truth Social getting exposed. So that's how we got to this point.
And he actually called them.
Or someone from their administration, one or two or the other. Now, what I can say about even that is, for whatever reason, Trump has taken a liking to the state of Missouri. The reason that it's not 163 people in the House is because a few of them have gotten plucked, including like our Attorney General, Real Schaaf, who ran for Attorney General, Ben Baker. They have gotten jobs in the Trump administration. So he will come to Missouri and scoop up 35, 40-year-old Republicans to go work in DC. But, you know, by and large, they didn't want to do it, but are going to defend it because they have a script that they are sticking to. So that's how we got here. Now, as to how does this impact the boundary, Denise talked about diluting votes. And in order to change a district, you have to move district lines. When we're talking about minority districts, North St. Louis County has the highest concentration of Black women in the state. And I can tell you from experience, we have a very hard time raising money and running for office as Black women. It's just how it is. Now in North County, we have a lot of Black women in office because this is where we live. The first congressional district is interesting in that, whereas, yes, it is still, even as drawn, a majority Black district. The population is Black. The voters are white. Y'all, you understand what I'm saying? So, you know, you can have a majority population, but if those populations are children that are in a voting age, then that switches the dynamic a little bit. So we, in the district as is newly drawn, we have Afton, Marlboro, somewhere. It's somewhere. If you've never heard of it, me either. I didn't. It's in St. Louis County somewhere. As I understand it, is in the first congressional district in the night. It's somewhere around here. It's, you have to drive through St. Louis City in its entirety to get to it. But it's in the district. The difference between us and them is that they are more affluent than we are here. Which makes it easier for them to run for office. So when we're talking about picking the person of our choice, regardless of even the race notwithstanding, there's a profound difference in things like school districts, fire districts, access to health care that look different in different parts of St. Louis County, right? And so changing those lines when we're talking about appropriation, which both Senator and I serve on, I'm the only person from St. Louis County, period, on budget of any party. So I represent in the House 1 million people. And it's a interesting thing to do because I have to remember, one, that it's, you know, I live in Ferguson. This is where I grew up. It's not the center of the universe. And that I have to do for other places, but it is very different, interesting dynamic to know that we vote for Democrats like they do in Clayton, because they have Democrat state rep and state senator, but Clayton School District is the top performing school district in the state, where Ferguson, Florissant, or Riverview Gardens, or Normandy struggles, right? So this is where having a person to serve in Congress who knows these things comes into play. So I did want to make sure that we kind of got an understanding of how we got here that's different than Texas, because this is also important to note that suffrage, or the act of voting, is on the state by and large. So what they did in Texas is different, or what they're allowed to do in Texas is different than what we can do here per our Constitution as it relates to suffrage, which is why in California, they have something to try to do redistricting in response to what happened in Texas and Missouri and possibly Ohio and maybe Louisiana.
It's in Indiana.
And maybe there, you know, this is happening, y'all. But they have to go to a commission to redraw their districts. We had that here in Missouri. It was called Clean Missouri. And then the legislature, as the legislature does, we just undid it because they could, right? The initiative petition process is going to be nearly impossible if we don't get this right. It's called a one district veto, which means that if one district out of the 8 congressional districts say no to a ballot measure, then it's a no. 7
So
other
the current
districts can be a
process.
yes.
Talk about the current, how it is now with the initiative
50
petition,
plus 1.
and then
Yes, ma'am.
explain how the initiative petition, we used it for Amendment A, and
Let's
share
tag
those
team this
different-
one.
Yeah,
So yes, right now it's majority, simple majority.
a simple majority, and
Whoever
6
gets the most,
congressional districts, is that right?
simple majority.
No,
Okay.
statewide.
Whatever, however, if only St. Louis County decides we gonna vote, oh well, it's, if you decide to vote, that's your choice. Simple majority is not by congressional district, which is also important because sometimes people don't find interest in things that are statewide matters, like Kansas City and now St. Louis City Police Department will now be a statewide vote, whether they pay taxes in the city of St. Louis or not.
Okay.
So that's
That's important.
the nature of the beast now,
Mhm.
right? The way that they've changed it, and this is critically important, is that it has to pass in every congressional district. So we can pass something, it can have the overwhelming majority. I believe it's what's the one at the top? Is that District 4, 3?
3.
Has 6 prisons
No.
in it. They count those prisoners during census to the prison, not to where they live. So if they say no, where all those 2 scoops of people can go vote. If they say no, and it's 300,000 of us in Congressional District 1 that say yes, and all the other districts we're cooked, it's a no.
So think about this, right? We've got 8 congressional districts, and they each have to be about the same size. Because that's what we were talking about, redistricting, right? So that means each congressional district makes up about 12.5% of Missouri's voters. So half of that could completely veto the will of the rest of the state.
Yes.
And that's just actually, and then it's half of the people that actually come out to vote. So a study from the Missouri Independent of all the votes cast during the presidential election last year showed that 5% under this proposal, 5% of Missouri's voters could override the other 95%.
That's right.
Because you would only need 5% of voters in one congressional district to stop something that passes overwhelmingly in all the rest of them.
Again, police departments, we have that now, that we're taking over spaces. If it happened to the city of St. Louis, it could certainly happen to the county of St. Louis, particularly when we're talking about things like merging the city and county or things of that nature. It is a way to take your voting rights. It is a way to dilute your vote. This is probably 2 of the most consequential I'm only 42, but the consequential signature passing around that we're probably all of us collectively will see in our lifetime.
And I'm older than her, and I would agree. But you know what's even crazier, y'all?
Representative Proudie, you
Wait,
mentioned.
can I just add one little thing about what we didn't mention yet was this rule only applies if it's the people
That's right.
that are trying to put
That's
the
right.
measure on the ballot. Because guess what? Legislators can put proposals on the ballot too.
Yes.
If the legislature votes to put something on the ballot,
It's on the ballot.
it's just a simple majority, 50%.
And as many of you heard me say, I've heard some of them
People do it.
read out loud, and I'm sure these aren't the only people that some of us would want to have the ability to do that.
Okay, I want to go back, Representative Proudie, because you sit on the budget.
That's right.
Do a fine job collecting millions of dollars to distribute not only in your district, but across the state. How would this bill, if passed, how is that going to influence your ability to bring money back to your district?
So that's a 2-part question. The congressional members do the federal budget. I do the state budget. However, when it comes to programs like SNAP, for example, that's a 100% federally funded program. That's probably what keeps me up at night, every night, is that we're going to have to deal with this next session. Not just SNAP, but the cuts to hospitals, to reimbursements for insurance, Medicaid, what those things look like, because it's what we call a pass-through. And by pass-through means we get federal funds. It passed through HUD. It passes through Medicaid. It passes through SNAP. It passes through WIC.
Coming from DC.
Coming from
passing
DC,
through
that's right.
Jefferson City to come back. to
Correct,
Ferguson and
because
these
we
other-
also, we have to comply with federal rules, but the programs per department, like the way our SNAP program looks, is something that Missouri does interdepartmentally. And if we don't have those funds, again, cooked, right? So who we have in DC is super important. Couple of weeks ago, I was told that the WIC program is about $360,000 a day in Missouri, not nationwide, in Missouri. So it inhibits our ability to fund programs, period, because there are some things that the people say we must fund, like Medicaid. We have to get that money from somewhere. We can either get it from the taxes you've already paid to the federal government and things, or we could just, we'll have to raise taxes somewhere else. I can go off on a tangent about corporate tax credits and things of the like, which we experience a lot for our school district, because we have a lot of corporations in the 73rd district alone, like Boeing, Evernorth, and things that have these massive tax credits. But it obviously impairs our ability to feed people down to the bare bones, let alone just my district. There are millions of Americans now that are going to wonder what they're going to do this holiday season.
Yeah, and I did hear one of the elected officials from the rural area. He was saying that his district stretched all the way down to the end of, I want to say that he might have been in the Kansas City area, and it stretched all the way down to the border, almost to Illinois. Because I don't look at TV, I tend to look at committee hearings. And he was like, he said, I was elected to provide representation for this group, and now I'm being stretched so far, and so that was a concern. And then we know that Senator Hoff was one of the ones who said no to this bill. He said no to House Bill 1. He said no to ending calling for the question. And he paid a price for that. So this is not, like you said, something that the Democrats are saying no to. This is something that the Republicans are saying no to, some of them.
Yes.
And so as we shift, because we want to give the audience a chance to speak, I don't know if you as Senator Ryan want to speak, or if you want to speak to that, or
I know he's and happy birthday to Lindsay. Senator, Lindsay, I said happy birthday, but you were asking, I'm sorry.
So from the standpoint of having these districts stretched to the point that you really can't provide representation in a district, because it is such a majority. It's like so many people that don't have so much in common. So imagine you trying to go down in Arkansas or Marlboro,
No, thank you.
and represent. And represent, or them coming and trying to represent for us, for our school boards, for our education, for our healthcare.
So federally, you don't have to live in the congressional district that you run in. That's a thing. But I'm trying to be delicate in how I answer this. Okay. We've kind of looked out.
Yeah, Representative, if it's okay,
Senator.
I'll go after you. I was muted because I have to wait for the host to unmute me.
Go ahead, Senator.
I've been listening to clearly Denise articulated very well from a legal perspective what this does. Representative Proudie has really touched on a lot of important things. This is what this is coming down to. I put in the chat, Donald Trump directly called members of the state Senate. And when he called those members, he bullied them into infringing on democracy. And we have now gotten to a place to where there is no regard for the will of the voter. There is no regard for equitable and adequate representation. There is no regard for the democratic process. And now what's happening in Washington with this dictator who has now decided to freeze the government and shut it down until he get what he wants, it has now become the temperament of the state legislature and state government.
Mhm.
And now, when you think about what's happening in Congress, you know, I was thinking about this as everyone was talking. Every person that has been elected to Congress that I've served with in the Missouri Senate has been the most extreme members because it is a place that they consider home. Because they can go there and they can push the most draconian policies, they can have the most hateful rhetoric, and now you have a president that is giving them cover every single day. So, to get to a really important point, where do we go from here? It's going to be imperative that you have people like Denise Lieberman and her organization challenging these things in court because it has now become a badge of honor to pass legislation that is not constitutional, like the Second Amendment Preservation Act, which would now nullify federal gun laws. And if you get pulled over with a gun in your car, even as a felon, you can now sue the police department that is arresting you because those federal gun laws does not exist in our state. The courts are having to govern our legislature and govern our elected officials and govern our democracy. It's going to be important to elect people who can go there and navigate the rules and the procedures when they matter and be able to have the ability at this point to fight. That's what it's come down to. Now, I served in a body where at one point in time we had rules and procedures in the Senate, and they'll send a crazy bill over to the Senate, and we were able to change it and block it and do all those things. But that is not the Senate of today.
That's right.
The Senate of today has now become House 2.0. How can we pass the craziest bills fast and in a hurry? So we got 2026 coming up. That's a midterm election. It's the most consequential election of our life right now because we're going into 28. We have to make sure we elect people on the state level that understands how to fight. We have to make sure that we are getting to the ballot box and understanding that this initiative petition process will not only do away with your right to pass values that voters want to see go into law, but you're going to also lose your vote, meaning the people of the St. Louis region pretty much, and I don't like to say this lightly, pretty much have to wonder whether or not their vote even counts. And it took a lot in me to say that. I say it with a heavy heart and I say it with so much caution, but that's how serious this has become. And if we do not get to a place where we recognize that what Donald Trump is trying to do, he has now hijacked the state legislature in Missouri, in my opinion, to push his agenda and hold the majority in 26 to probably give himself a third term to keep from going to prison in 28. It sounds crazy. If you read it in a book, you would think I was making it up, but it is the absolute truth. Mm-hmm. So that's what we're dealing with that. And thank you for giving me the time to make that. But guys, I'm very, very concerned, deeply concerned about the future of our democracy. And I can't pretend that what we experienced this past special session, I left very concerned and extremely pissed off.
Yeah. Thank you, Senator. And that was my question. Like, what, with that representation, what would it look like for us if this bill was to pass? So I want to go back to the Honorable Denise, and I want you to tell us with the signatures, because Dr. Butler called this meeting because they wanted the audience to know about the signatures and what they can do. And there were very few people in the audience who said that I collected signatures. We had people who said I signed, but we need more boots on the ground.
We do. I mean, and Senator Williams, thank you for your remarks. I could hear in the tone of your voice the pain that brings you, and it, as a voting rights advocate, I share that. But there is something we can do about it, okay? And we can actually take the power back. We actually can, and stop these rigged maps from ever being in place. And this is something that is well within our grasp right now. So I know it's really overwhelming. All of it. Like every day I wake up and want to crawl under the bed. But if we can realize that there's one thing each of us can do collectively, it makes a difference. This measure, if we get our friends and our families to sign this petition, and we get enough valid registered voters to sign this petition before December, the maps do not go into effect. They are on hold, and then we get to vote. The people get to vote, and our will determine the fate of these maps. So the power is yours. And that's true for all of this. That's why you see so much voter suppression happening. If your vote wasn't so powerful, they wouldn't be spending so much time and money trying to make it harder. But that power lives in you, and it rests with you, and we can use the mechanisms we still have to make sure that we exercise it. So I sent Cassandra, not realizing that Cassandra wasn't going to be here today, a QR code that you can use to sign up if you want to collect signatures. And these are things that you can do on your own time. You don't have to go, there's places where you can go and collect signatures, but you can also bring them with you to church on Sunday morning. These petitions are not partisan. Okay, so churches cannot take a position and say vote Democrat or vote Republican. This is simply a question of, do you want the people of Missouri to be able to weigh in on this? And so you can take them to church with you. Check in with your pastor first, you can stand outside in front of Walmart and do it. And one reason that you don't have someone who's on staff with the campaign, the People Not Politicians campaign, in this room tonight is because today was election day. I spent the day doing election protection, so I got my shirt on. But they actually spent the day standing at polling places all around the state, collecting signatures from voters who were showing up to cast ballots today. So it's People Not Politicians, MO.org. And that is where you will be able to sign up to get trained if you want to collect signatures.
Awesome. Thank you. And I want to thank each of our panelists that joined us today and weighed in on this issue. And so now it's time for Q&A. If you all have questions, you can just raise your hand and we'll call you out. And also on Zoom, if you have questions, we'll have you raise your hand. We'll take them one at a time. But I see this gentleman here.
Thank you.
And if you could give us volume when you speak.
So I'm a little confused. So I need some clarity. I hear you saying that we get enough signatures to get this on the ballot. But did you also say that we need every precinct to vote? Or, because I heard something about 5% ruling 95%. And that kind of threw me. I think that even if we vote here in our district, that somebody else can knock us out.
Right. So when the legislature passed the resolution in September to change the citizen initiative process, two things. It only applies to citizens trying to add something to our Constitution. And because it changes the threshold, the voters actually have to vote on it before it can go into effect. And so that will likely be on the ballot next November. So what is happening right now is called a referendum or just repeal. Missouri, and so this is so not about changing the Constitution. What we are trying to do is repeal a statute, a law.
Simple majority.
That's right.
Right now, it's still simple majority right now. That's right.
Yes.
All right, that was it.
And keep in mind that they are vetting the signatures to make sure that these are registered voters, that they're citizens and that kind of thing. So that's why we need
more than what's required? You said it was
Because
117,000.
some won't be valid.
Yeah.
Yeah, some won't be valid or some won't be legible, because ultimately it's the local election authorities that have to read those things and check and see if you're in fact a registered voter.
So let me say this, this is critically important. There's a word going around that if you sign it twice, neither of your signatures will be valid. That is not true. If you happen to sign it twice because you don't remember, there are a lot of petitions going on right now. And sometimes at grocery stores, you just grab the clipboard and sign. If you happen to, and I got this directly from Eric Fay, and
Was Eric Fay?
Eric Fay is one of the directors of the Board of Elections down at Northwest Plaza. Your signature will count the first one, the second one they'll invalidate. So if you forget and you just happen to have signed more than once, they'll just kick one out. I know people were saying that your signatures, they're going to toss both of them. That's not accurate.
Any other questions?
Hey, at
Thank
the
you.
library. This is Michael. Can you hear me?
Yes.
We have a question on Zoom. The person is asking, are there signatures from all parts of Missouri?
Yes, this is still, because this is still 50+1, it will be just the number of votes. It doesn't have to be in particular.
But I think he's asking to get it on the ballot.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, because this is a request to repeal a statute, they need to get the equivalent of 5% of the registered voters in 6 out of 8
That's what I was saying.
Missouri
6.
congressional districts.
Okay, I thought you were saying.
Yeah, and that will get it on the ballot. Then once it's on the ballot, then we go to vote next year. And if the majority of us decide to repeal the maps, they get repealed.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
It's
So we still have to have
it's complicated.
out of the 8 congressional districts
For the signature.
No, just to get it on the ballot.
just to get it on the ballot.
Okay,
6.
it's so already this campaign has collected signatures in all 8 congressional
Okay,
districts.
good.
They're
Okay.
going to make that threshold. So then it's just a matter of majority. When we go to vote next year and it's on the ballot, if a majority of Missourians, and they don't have to be from any particular part of the state,
She was asking.
if the majority of Missourians vote to repeal the map is gone.
If the courts don't toss it.
Yes. And I'm part of a lawsuit that's challenging mid-decade redistricting. And our case goes to trial next Wednesday in Jefferson City.
All right. Any other questions? We're making great timing. Is anybody on any questions online?
Can we take a moment to acknowledge former state representative Kevin Windham here in the room?
Yes. Do you have any comments?
Former Representative Windham served on the elections committee when he served in the House and has seen a lot of these attacks over the years.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, I got a question. Yeah, I know the initiative petition that you're talking about, that's just one option, because is there also a lawsuit in the state to like throw it out because it wasn't fair? You know, sometimes the judges
Quite a few.
throw out maps and say, we guys didn't do it right.
Yeah.
That's another.
So yes, there's several ways we can get rid of these congressional maps. One way is through the people. Sign that petition, it goes on the ballot, we vote and say, we don't want those maps anymore.
Mhm.
Also, there have been now 4 or 5 lawsuits filed challenging the maps. I'm on a case where we're saying simply that our Constitution doesn't let us do this in the middle of the decade. And there's a reason for that, because it's nothing then but political theater, right? Our case is going to trial next week. There's also 2 cases that have been filed in Kansas City area challenging how the maps were drawn, the fact that they sliced Kansas City up into 3 parts instead of keeping it intact. There's also a lawsuit arguing that the governor didn't have the right to call the special session in the first place. That was filed by the NAACP. And therefore, nothing that if it was not valid to have the special session, then nothing that comes out of it should be valid. They're awaiting a decision on that. And then the campaign, People Not Politicians, has filed a lawsuit to guarantee that all the signatures that were collected since September 12th actually get counted.
Now, the courts can't veto a portion of it's either, they have to take it whole or not.
That's insane.
Yeah, now, budget is different.
Well, so no, my case is simply saying you can't do mid-decade redistricting, and therefore the maps are invalid. That's the trial that's happening next week. The trial about, hey, they tore up this community, they sliced up Kansas City, they're diluting Black votes in Kansas City. That one is a much bigger lift because you actually have to look at all the little ways that the map is drawn. That one has a hearing in Kansas City at the end of November. So that one is going to carry on for a little while.
All right. And I see that we have Councilwoman Nicole Greer. Did you have anything you wanted to add? Welcome. She's mute.
I don't see an earlier question.
Councilwoman Greer. She's come off mute. I see her looking for it. Good evening.
I'll read this one. It says, hello.
Hi, thank you. No, I'm just here listening. So I can get as much information as I can to share with our community. So thank you. Thank you for the acknowledgement.
Absolutely.
So there's a question that says, hello, since the Republican majority is advancing a proposal that could curtail ballot initiatives, I think the citizens have another tool in their toolbox. Recall the elected, that's a good, I'm gonna answer this one. Recall the elected officials who are undermining the process of citizen participation. So constitutionally, there is no recall process for legislators in the state of Missouri. We don't have that. The way that legislators can be removed in the House, at least, is either they resign, the Attorney General can go to the Supreme Court for like malfeasance or something in office, or the members themselves can expel a member. But we don't constitutionally have a removal process or a recall for state level legislators. So we can't do that like that.
But you have to run for office every 2 years. And your
House.
own constituents have to make a decision every 2 years whether to keep you in office.
Absolutely. And I think that's the important part of making sure that we're not just staying in our own bubble. Many times when folks come down to the Capitol to lobby, they lobby to people who are friendly. You know, if you all come to me, I'm gonna be like, yeah, to whatever you're saying, there's a good chance that we're going to agree because we live in the same place, we experience the same things, but you know, it's a game of numbers. And when we aren't getting our way, you have to go to people who may not be in the same party as you and get those numbers. In the House, it's 82 votes for something to advance. If you're a Democrat, currently there's only 52 of us. So it's not enough of us, and as far as our caucus is concerned, to do that. So it's imperative to make sure that you know, when you come down there, already shows great courage. It can be intimidating coming to that building, but to, you know, don't be afraid to let the governor have it. We don't get another one. You know, he's a Republican, but he's your governor. The Attorney General is your Attorney General, whether he's a Republican or not. You make him serve you because that's what he said he wanted to do. That's, you know, the job that he swore to do. But yeah, there is no recall process, unfortunately, on this level of government in Missouri.
All right, so we have any other questions in the comments over there?
We have one.
Okay, yes.
Yeah, I know there's a rule, and there's something going in front of the Supreme Court right now about racial gerrymandering.
Yes.
And is that going to knock out anything that we're doing? If we're kind of hoping that they're going to keep everything in place?
Yes, it could. So, and I'm sorry, what's your name, sir?
John Knowles?
John. What John was referencing is a case that's pending right now in front of the United States Supreme Court in Washington, D.C. And it's a case out of Louisiana called Louisiana versus Cali. And it is about racial gerrymandering. Surprise, surprise, when Louisiana did their districts after the 2020 census, they did not give create them in such a way that African Americans had a sufficient political power. And the court said, no, you need to redraw these in a way that creates another majority minority district. In other words, another district where Black people would have enough power to elect a candidate. And that's what the Voting Rights Act requires. The one that was passed in 1965. After they marched across the Edmund Pettus Bridge and got beaten on Bloody Sunday, right? That law. The case that's in front of the Supreme Court right now seeks to really whittle down that protection in the Voting Rights Act against race discrimination and how we draw those lines. In fact, the Trump administration is arguing, I have to take a deep breath here, because this part of the Voting Rights Act is worded after the 15th Amendment, which says that the right to vote shall not be denied or abridged on account of race, color, or previous condition of servitude. The Voting Rights Act says the right to vote shall not be denied or abridged on account of race, color, or condition of previous servitude. And that's the one that says if you are doing race discrimination, the court can tell you to add another Black district, which is what they told me. The Trump administration is arguing that this is racist, that the Voting Rights Act is racist because it requires the court to take account of race in order to remedy race discrimination.
Thank you. Yes, thank you.
Sounds like catch-22.
It sounds like nonsense.
It's nonsense.
Okay. The 15th Amendment and the 14th Amendment are not racist. They are constitutional amendments designed to protect racial equality. So what that means for us here in Missouri is that a federal case challenging Missouri's rigged congressional maps as diluting Black votes, which, by the way, it does. The line is drawn right through Troost, which is basically the Delmar divide of Kansas City.
Yes. I mean, literally, right?
Literally. The bill sponsor in the hearing, when asked, and maybe even asked by you, but one of the North St. Louis County reps, are you familiar with Troost? He said no. He said no. And the reason that it is the Delmar divide of Kansas City is because prior to passage of the Fair Housing Act, Black people were not allowed to live west of Troost. Anyway, so yes, I would argue that the Voting Rights Act should also prohibit the race impact of Missouri's new maps. But this Supreme Court case could make that sort of claim impossible. Right. And that's why many of the other cases are filed in state court, arguing about things like it's not compact or it spreads out too far.
I have to note, this is important to note as well, not only will that Louisiana case have implications on potentially the 5th district, it will certainly have implications on the 1st, as is the 1st congressional district is the only one that considers race in the way in which it was drawn currently, right? We have the majority minority district that is right now protected by the Voting Rights Act. Whatever happens in Louisiana will, without question, either preserve that for the 1st, which is where we live, or it won't be a consideration going forward. And that, will likely, more than likely, change the way our district looks, because they'll be able to start slicing, different areas of St. Louis County, certainly. So that should be a concern. This is just what we have as far as the Supreme Court. One of the things that kind of, again, got us to the Project 2025 is that, I'll be honest, just like party leadership, when we were talking about Project 2025 and 2022, kind of have a response of they wouldn't do that. They wouldn't do that. That's unconstitutional. They wouldn't do that. And then, the Supreme Court said that Donald Trump, or him specifically, but presidents can do what they want to do if they're doing it in their official capacity as president, even take, classified documents. So they're stretching and bending, a knee to what we have going on. I also have to say, Donald Trump is a 78-year-old man. If you think that's the face of the fight, I have news for you. That man's name is Stephen Miller. Stephen Miller, the architect of Project 2025, is the director of the federal budget. Correct. The chief of staff is a 39-year-old man. The vice president of the United States is a 41-year-old man. Your co-director of the FBI is a 43-year-old man. Pam Bondi is a 28-year-old woman. Girl, face just trash. 28. One of the people over Homeland Security, she is 28 years old. They're getting the young, they're getting their food because they're playing a long game. These people, by the time, they're 60, they'll have 20 years of legislative experience that Democrats don't have. Right? We won't have that because, we have to make sure that we're making room in our party, not just for various races and sexuality, but ages. We can't keep saying that young folks don't want to participate and we're not giving them the space to, because if we're paying attention to the project, that's what they're doing over there. It's going to be certainly hard to compete. Our 30-year-olds to compete when by the time they're 50, they're just now getting into it and learning it. And they're already, Pam Bondi is 28. You understand what I'm saying? So we have to look at the whole of it, not just Donald Trump, whether Donald Trump survives because he's not in the best of health or not. Your vice president will be 41 years old. His chief of staff will be 39 years old. Your co-director of, I think Kash Patel may be 40. They're getting there because there's a long game here. Their major fundraiser is from here. She's from St. Louis. She's 41. She started in 2008. So that's 20 years of experience. Most of the Democrats you see in the House, we don't have. So when you hear them campaigning and saying, I have all this experience, you don't have this. Correct. That's the issue. That's the imbalance here. So, now we're sitting here. When we were doing the electric slide, when Barack Obama won, we electric slid too long.
We do.
While we were electric sliding, they were tea party.
That is it.
Yeah.
That is it.
That's when they started this. Dick Cheney just died today.
Yes.
Right? So they were getting all of these things together for now, the things that we were seemingly caught off guard for now, back in 2008, 20 years ago, they were doing this while we were still thinking that we've overcome racism in 2008. We cannot keep making this same mistake and thinking that is the Carville days back when Bill Clinton was elected. The game has changed. These people ain't nothing nice down there.
And on that note,
Wow.
we are at time, but I do want to express the importance and thank you,
Yes, ma'am.
the Honorable State Representative Raychel Proudie. We thank you.
Yes, ma'am. My pleasure.
My
Privilege.
Yeah. I watched you the way some people look at power. Seriously.
That.
So what I want to say, though, it is so important that we do the voter registrations, guys, that we go out and make sure that young people are registering to vote.
Absolutely.
That we're making sure that the names haven't been purged from the voter registration list. And that our main purpose, one of the central reasons tonight, is to make sure that you understand what the petition is about and make sure we sign the petition. But we also want to throw petition signing parties. Okay? Petition signing parties. So we can get the numbers that we need. So when they toss out 100,000, we still got 300,000 to give them.
Absolutely.
You understand? And that's what it's about tonight. And I want to thank each of you all for showing up. Each of you on the Zoom. I see my brother here.
Heritage Foundation. He's right. Yeah. The Heritage. Yes. Mr. John Bowman. He's correct. The Heritage Foundation. They have been at this for a while. I'm glad he mentioned that. That's an organization to watch and keep your eye on. Absolutely.
Okay.
And is Brian still on? Thank you.
Is Dr. Butler still on the line?
Education.
Hey, yes, I am.
And Senator Brian Williams, is anything you want to add? We're closing out. We're going to have Senator Brian Williams give us 1 minute, and then Dr. Butler, you can wrap us up.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that opportunity. One, I want to thank Proud. I want to thank all of my colleagues and senators. Ms. Cassandra, thank you for your leadership with this. really stay in touch and understand what's at stake right now. What Denise is doing, she talked about the petition process. We got a lot of valuable information on where we need to reference, where we go forward with democracy. And something else I think is really important to note, and that's the simple fact that life moves at the speed of relationships. Let's use this as an opportunity to continue to engage, to continue to mobilize, and to continue to share ideas. And as always, it's always been a tremendous honor to represent every single one of you as your state senator. And I look forward to continuing to work hard together.
Thank you. Thank you. They asked for the organization's website.
Oh,
We can type it in.
I can
for
type
Proud.
it in.
You got it?
so if you want to sign up to get trained to get some signatures, go to peoplenotpoliticiansmo.org. peoplenotpoliticiansmo.org. For those in the room, I've also brought some materials about Missouri Voter Protection Coalition. You can get more information on that at movpc.org.
Also, Mr. John Bowman sent and said that the St. Louis County training for signature will be this weekend. It is Saturday, November 8th from 10 to 11:30 at St. Louis County NAACP office. That's 20,
down the
just
road.
down the street, 23 North Oaks Plaza, St. Louis, Missouri, 63121. I think it's where the McDonald's, the Dollar General, I think that is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like right at like Natural Bridge
Uh-huh.
and that intersection right there.
So I'll upload this to the Freeman Bosley Jr. Facebook page.
Yes,
you all
and
can
John
just-
Bowman, can you send that to me too? This is Denise, and I'll share it out to our list.
Okay. Well, we want to thank you all. Oh, Dr. Butler. Thank you for this opportunity and for Proud putting this together. It was very informational, and to each of our panelists who came and spoke and gave us wisdom and knowledge.
We are very appreciative of all of you being here and representing and explaining, because I didn't know all this information, and it's been very helpful. You've
in
educated
society.
Thank you. If
Thank
you learned
you
something,
all.
raise your hand. I got to put up both of mine. Yes,
I did.
thank you.
I will.
Dr. Sandra.
I think so. Are you there? This is beautiful. You can drop in the chat, a little hard if you learned something. And we're going to get ready to close out because we're just a little bit past our time. So we'll say thank you again for showing up and for caring and for standing up for Missouri and democracy. Have a good night.